Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to South Close Sellers Club, the April edition. My name is Bennett. Thank you for joining us. I'll be your host today. If this is your first time here, there's lots of stuff to be getting through, loads of people to meet, and some really valuable content that comes ahead. I'm managing partner of a company called Second Voice, and we focus on supporting startup businesses take control of their sales efforts and grow organically. Looking forward to working with you all over time and getting to know you some more through the community, but really excited to share with you what's coming up ahead. If it is your first time here, I'll give you a bit of information on what the South Coast Sellers Club is. So, first and foremost, it's the community. It's about having this meetup series. It's about getting involved and being part of something much bigger than just ourselves. And we want to aim this at salespeople, people who are trying to start their own businesses and are looking to win more clients. And that might be leadership teams, people on the ground, or first timers. It really doesn't matter. We run these events regularly. And what we're probably going to see, hopefully, over the next few months, the world opens up a little bit and we can do some FaceTime and maybe even have a bar in one of our environments soon. So let's be hopeful for that. And we want to give you practical advice. So these new event structures are about really working together, sharing your own experiences while hearing from myself, our guests, and the other people that get involved with everything to do South Coast Sellers. We have a private LinkedIn group, which I'll share access to at the end of the event. And please get in there and ask questions and get involved with the community. And the idea is, and I've said over and over and over again, this is for you by us, but it's a way of sharing between ourselves and making sure that all of us have some good ideas, someone to have a shoulder to lean on, and even get an arm around the shoulder. So we want to make sure that you're in a position as the world opens up, as businesses grow, to further enhance your sales capabilities and see your businesses and your targets absolutely explode in a good way. I'm really excited about today, but before we go on, I'm going to run through a quick overview of what we've got in store. So clearly, I've done my intro and welcome. In a moment, I'm going to bring Steve up on stage to have a chat and tell you more about Silicon Brighton. And then we're going to welcome Ron Tanner. And Ron and I are going to be having a good chat throughout the session about sales processes and obviously what today is all about, and that's constructing and controlling conversation. And that can be verbal or written, but we'll focus on the verbal side, on the meeting side of clients today. And there'll be opportunities for you to get in groups, share your experiences, and discuss a lot of what we're talking about, and challenge some of it as well. It'll be great to hear your feedback as well. You will see that everybody at the moment is currently muted. We've done that because we're not in a webinar format. Everybody can get involved. So when you go in your breakout rooms, you'll be put into groups of 4 or 5, and then you can chat to your heart's content and have your videos on and go and network. But in this session, we'll be keeping everybody muted. So at any point, if you've got any questions at all, go into the chat section after everyone's said hello and got your LinkedIn profiles in there. Come and leave your questions and we'll get to them if we can. If we don't have a chance to address them today, we will put them into the LinkedIn chat as well. So at the end of the session, we'll have a quick review, talk about our next event, which we're already planning because we're always one step ahead, and then we'll leave you to your days. But without any further ado, I will pass you over to Mr. Steve Rackley, co-founder of Silicon Brighton.
Cheers, Ben. Hi, everyone. Just following on from Ben, I just want to say massive thanks to you all for joining us today. Loads of brilliant people that I recognise, so I'm really looking forward to hopefully catching up with a few of you a bit later. My name's Steve. I'm one of the founders at Silicon Brighton, and we are super chuffed to support the South Coast Sellers Club. Give you a little bit about us. We are a community-led initiative to support digital growth in the city. We began what feels like a lifetime ago now, back in late 2019, by working with local groups to help raise their profile and provide individuals, just like everyone here, with free opportunities for networking, training, upskilling, and personal development. The aim to try and help everyone benefit through the sharing of expertise and the forming of new connections and partnerships. So far, we've run and supported 80 plus events and given a platform to hundreds of speakers to share their knowledge. Now, if you haven't come across Silicon Brighton before, I would urge you to take a few minutes later to check out our website. It's siliconbrighton.com, and there you can learn more about upcoming events and browse through some of the great resources and speaker talks we have from previous sessions. You can also sign up to our newsletter via the website footer. It's a monthly newsletter, and it'll help you stay informed about everything that's happening locally in tech. I hope everyone enjoys today's session. I would just like to say before I leave that we are really keen to hear from anyone watching who would like to explore how they can contribute to Silicon Brighton. I'm quite sure, I know there is a tremendous amount of expertise here today. If any of you have some knowledge or experience that you're willing to share for the benefit of our local industry, then please get in touch. That could be speaking at an event, that could be helping with a workshop, or even starting your own group just like this. We'll include my contact details in the follow-up to today. And yeah, really hope you all enjoy the session. Thank you.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks a lot, mate. And it's worthwhile saying, I've been running this event with Steve and his team for a few months now, and it's a subject really close to my heart. And just to reiterate, if there is anything that you feel our business community will benefit from, get in touch with Steve or myself, and I can talk about my experiences in running these events alongside Silicon Brighton as well. So 2 thumbs up. Now listen, I'm not going to waste any more time. We're going to jump straight in, and so I'm going to introduce you to Ron Tanner. And Ron is a highly experienced, intelligent human being, has taught me a lot just in the run up to these sessions as well. He's a business consultant, management consultant, and psychologist galore, and the man knows some stuff. So Ron, welcome to the floor. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for the invite. Really pleased to be here, and thanks everybody for coming. And hopefully today you'll be able to learn something. I'm not a qualified psychologist, Ben, so please no one call me for any sort of that advice. But I am deeply interested in conversation and how conversations are constructed, and have been for a long time, and have actually done about 20 years of personal development and inquiry, and so I have got pretty good at getting insight into people over that time.
Good man. Well, we're going to learn a lot. So, tell us a little bit more about what's in store for the audience today, what you and I are going to be running through, and
and I'm very happy to do it, jointly with you, because you're, Ben, I've heard so much about, the great work that you do specifically in sales. What I got really interested in, and what I think the point of today is, there's, when I went into businesses, I saw there were lots of good salespeople, and but always the business owner was often looking for that incredible salesperson, that rock star. And they'd always say to me, look, let's go and find a really good salespeople. When you go out and try and find a really good salespeople, a person, they, number one, cost quite a bit of money, and number two, they're often quite hard to manage. And so what I developed was, how do you make really average or good salespeople into brilliant salespeople? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to do that through unpacking the conversation that you have with a client or with a customer, and helping them, discover perhaps rather than what they thought they wanted, but actually what they really wanted when they were sitting in front of you. And that's very distinctive, because quite often everybody, doesn't always ask for what they want, and your job is to find out what they really want. And I did that, we're going to do that through a process, through a structure, which we're going to learn today. And we've got a lot to get through in that structure. So it's going to be a bit fast paced, but what we've decided to do is break it into 2 group sessions today. So you're going to get double the time to actually meet somebody that you may have not met before. So that's a way of networking. As well, you're going to get the opportunity to be able to work with them inside your groups and discover what your own sales process is. And then also, between you and I, Ben, is we can reflect back on the processes that we've learned, and hopefully you'll walk away with at least one thing that will improve your sales process and get you a high closing rate at the end of the day. We're all here to, it's the South Coast Sellers Club. We're here to close.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it sounds ideal, and I think what we want to see more from these events as well is recognizing. Our last event was talking about the tools to use to get in front of people. This is now about what we do when we're there, and all of our videos are up on YouTube as well. But we'll dive straight in. So I think the first thing we want to be doing is inviting you into a breakout room, where it would be great if you can start to discuss what your existing sales processes are, not what you do in those steps, but what the steps are that you go through when you're in front of a customer. If you're early to this and you don't have that already, then please ask questions of the people that do have the experience. And we're going to be in these rooms for around 15-20 minutes, just sort of sharing that experience and best practice. Some things you'll hear you want to adopt as your own immediately. Some things you'll talk about and think, this is really exciting, or perhaps I can try something differently. All I want you to do during this breakout session is start to discuss between yourselves what those steps do look like for you today and what you might want them to look like moving forwards. And then when you've done that, we'll bring you back in around 1:05-ish, depending on timings. And then we can start to talk through both Ron's process and my experience around building out sales tactics and structures around that as well. So we're going to give you the bones, and the idea is that you start to put the flesh on the bones and add a bit of personality to that process in your own business. So just to reiterate, discussing what the steps in your current sales process or your current meeting processes are, and we'll put some information in the chat as a reminder. So if I could ask our wonderful production team,
just before we go, Ben.
Sorry,
and what to focus on is number those steps. So you think of the structure that you use at the moment, and then also think of what time that you spend on each part of those structures. As traditionally, there's known as a 4-step sales process. Open, discover, meet the needs, close, that type of thing. And do you ask yourself the question or notice? Do you spend more time at the beginning or more time at the end? Is the close short? Is it long? How much time do you spend in the middle? Just reflect on your own process and imagine that you're training somebody in your organization. So when you're talking to the group, you're going to have 4 or 5 minutes each, depending on how many people in the group. And just imagine you're telling the group, this is how I train a new person in my organization, or hey, this is the training I've done myself to as a sales process structure, and just have fun with it. Enjoy it.
Hopefully a good session there, guys. A few familiar faces on the screen. Cool. Okay, so I would imagine then you've got some good information out of each other. If you haven't got those processes in place, I'm sure that you've already got a few ideas. Now, what we're going to do in this section is Ron and I are going to now have a bit of we're going to listen to Ron essentially talk through the ideas of what his process and his structure is, and talk around my experiences within sales and selling as well, to combine some of those points together. So I will pass over to Mr. Tanner for this.
Thanks, Ben. So a bit of history first. I hope you all found that useful and enjoyed it. If we go back into the history of sales process, it's pretty well based on, as far as I've understood, on a 4-step process, and it was all around the theme of tell and sell. So it was relax, disturb, relieve, and then close. And that was I think from the 70s, like 50. It's 50 years old now. And it's still used quite a bit, but when you get people like Ben who've built nuances around that, and all I'm doing in the work that I do is I built some nuances around that 4-step process and made it into a 7-step process. And the I guess the most contextual shift to this whole thing is I turned it from a tell and sell to an ask and sell, and I'm sure many of you are using that already, because if you're doing tell and sell, you're probably a bit old school, and it's not working as well. But with ask and sell, as Ben will probably agree with, it was really it's become much more useful, because with the ask, what you're trying to do is trying to understand exactly what the client wants. And so an example is, and I think, real estate agents often use tell and sell at this moment, because if you say, you get a real estate agent and say, hey, I want to sell my house, I want to sell my flat, they go, oh, where is it? And how much do you want? And then go straight into a presentation of why they can do it better than the guy down the road. And then wait for, you to, some hook to close you or not. And I call that, a classic tell and sell. What we're going to do today is look at an ask and sell conversation. What's the first part of an ask and sell conversation? And is getting the agenda out. So the first thing that I do in any sales meeting or any conversation, because you can apply this method across not just sales, is just when you're sitting down with somebody, is the agenda of getting, well, what do you actually want to discuss? What do you want to talk about? Why are you both in the room? The first thing is this agenda is broken into two parts, which is the what I call the global agenda, which is the big agreement why you're there. And this usually comes after the chit chat, how long, maybe you spend 5 minutes just asking how it is, just settling in. But actually at some point, and that's why I wanted you to focus on, when did you actually start the conversation? There's a little bridge there that you actually begin the sales meeting, or whether you're on Zoom or whether you're, face-to-face, hopefully more in the future. And so that first thing in the first step is, what are we here to talk about? And often people don't agree, don't get clear on that. And so it becomes a point to restate the context of why you're there. So if I'm going to see Steve and into his company and say, Steve said, I've heard about you, can you come and talk to us about what you do? It's, I'm here, Steve, to discover whether you want to buy my services. Is that what we're talking about? And get, just be a little bit more upfront in that, and you'll find that agreement then sets a tone for the meeting. The second part of that agenda process is what I call the specific agenda. And this is probably the most important thing I will talk to you about today. The rest of it flows pretty easily, because with the specific agenda, what you're doing is finding out exactly what the client or the customer wants. And using an ask process, I find, is respectful. So you're sitting I sit in a space as I don't know anything about you as a client. Of course, I've done my research, but just as a space is, please tell me what you want. But often people, as I said in the beginning, don't know exactly what they want. So you've got to take them through a process. So, you could ask them a big, wide open question is, what would you like to get out of today? Big, wide question. And you'll find that they'll probably go, da, 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 da. And some people will say it in 30 seconds and some people will take 5 minutes. The key is, it doesn't matter how long they take. Your job is there just to be of service to them. And this is really key. You're in a space of, I am here of service in the client. So that feeling of the client being sold to is completely out of the room. You're there to hopefully be able to help them. And when they're finished doing, this big wide open question, the key word, and there's one key word that I want you to take away today, and that's called specific. And ever since I learned this process and started using this process, that is probably the most used word that I use a lot of the time, even in my life when I'm having a conversation with people. Because the specific, using the word specific in your next sentence helps the person be able to narrow down their thinking and get more clarity about what they want. So the brain actually is able to focus. So what would you like to talk to about today becomes, what would you specifically like to talk to about today? And they then give you a number of points. So they'll say, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about A, C, B, C, D, E, and you just let that run. And at some point, what will happen after they've given those points And this is all quite interesting because they're giving you really interesting information. They're saying, look, I want this and I want this. And you're sitting there, your brain's going, oh, I can do that. I can do that. This is getting really good now. I'm getting excited, but, stay calm. And then you say to them, okay, anything else or what else? And you see the nuance in that language. So if you ask them anything else, they'll probably go, no. But if you ask them what else, what you've done is actually taken them to a little bit deeper. And that's the difference. It's one of those 5 questions: who, what, where, how. Now, out of all of those questions, what drives the conversation? Whereas, where did you go on a holiday versus what did you do on your holiday creates a different answer. Because when you ask the question, use the prefix of what, it drives people into a deeper feeling state. And what happens is that they start to tell you different stuff about what they want. And the reason for that is people generally don't tell you the truth to start with. They're not lying. They just don't know what their truth is. And your job is to, in the specific agenda, is try and find out what that truth is. So you can find out whether what you're there to service, sell them, whatever, matches with that. Because if you're able to match with that, then the chances of you having a conversion are much, much higher.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Ron, because actually when you're talking with somebody and trying to get information out of them, individuals are so used to their environment, their status quo, what is. They might say something that you see as an immediate need and a problem, but they're so used to saying it or living it that they don't recognize it as a problem themselves as well. So there's that, moving them to a point of consideration is really, really powerful. So I can wholeheartedly get behind that. And just one other point you mentioned earlier is when you hear something that is really valuable, don't be in such a rush to answer the question. Listen to learn, not listen to answer, right? So you want to capture down that need or that situation that you think you want to speak about. Park it. Acknowledge that you've heard it. Say that you might be able to address something like that later. Park it and continue with the questioning that's so powerful that you're exploring now.
Yeah, and I would probably just put a nuance in that, Ben, is I don't even say to them that I can acknowledge it. I acknowledge it through my body. I say, thank you. What else? And I just wait for them to run out. And I even, I will have a blank page in front of me and I will just simply, put down bullet points that I haven't even written anything into to visually prompt them as well. And so they think, oh, there's more to the list. So what you're encouraging them to do is to open up. And I can't agree with you more about that point about the urge to speak. It's almost like you have to bite your tongue because, you've got so excited about, you've got the sales call, like all the work that we did last week to get them there through the CRM and the 7 systems that you have to use, the calendars and the SEOs, and you finally got the sale and this person's sitting in front of you and they're actually, you're sitting there going, oh my God, I can do this. This person really, really needs me, or needs our product. And this is the key to, your own personal energy management in this situation, is that you've got to work out how to remain calm and open and think of them, not think of yourself. Yep. And that's a real key point. I mean, have you got examples that you've worked with people where maybe it's worked or hasn't worked, or you've got a bit excited?
I've been excited plenty of times. It's I think the term I use, and you've probably seen it around, is you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio. And when I first started out, you've got a great product you've built. You've got a great product you're really proud of, and you're seeing all your other colleagues have huge successes, and you're like, right, okay, I've got to rush through this process. So if I tell you about everything my business is or does, I'm expecting you on the other side of that conversation to make the connection in your own brain about why we're valuable. And 99 times out of 10, that just doesn't happen. So to your point in understanding the situation, you go to a doctor's, right? They're not going to put a plaster on a broken bone. They diagnose the situation first and then apply the appropriate remedy. It's exactly what salespeople need to be doing. Go and diagnose and research and find and challenge and explore that before recommending or pushing your product. It does two things. First of all, it recognizes that you actually care and are listening and are paying attention to their needs. But secondly, you're applying the right solution and fixing a problem, not selling on how wonderful your thing is. You're fixing their problem with your tool or service, not saying how great it is.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised what comes out. So, in that real estate example, if the real estate changed their sales process and did diagnosis and discovery, they would often find out that the person, there is actually perhaps other products the person wants. Oh, we're going to sell a house and we're going to buy a rental property. And the real estate agent then is finding out, oh, this person needs a rental, service as well. I mean, I've been in so many situations where the most surprising things come out of that you never expect. And then they become the most valuable thing, because further down is actually the real thing. So let's establish that step. We've got that agenda out. We've got the global agenda. We've got the specific agenda. And just remember that word specific. The second step that we need to do is establish our credibility. Like, are we a match? I was going to a sales meeting and saying, well, am I a match for this person? Is my product a match for this person? And it's called the step 2, the positioning process, or establishing your credibility, because this person's been speaking now for, could be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something, telling you all their points. You've got to give them a break. You've got to give them a little, a tidbit to just rest on for the moment. So I say to, this part here of establishing your credibility is 25 words or less, because of course, what happens is, you're dying to present, but you haven't actually got all the information yet. All you've got is the points that people want to talk about at this point. So, establishing credibility is also got to match what their type of business. So if you're in a 10 million pound business or 20 million pound business, your credibility is, look, I've worked with 20 million pound businesses and we've done this sort of thing. You can look at our client list. We're okay. So basically you're giving the person confidence that you can do the job. And also it's a little handy part to also find out whether you've been referred in or not, whether it's a warm sale or a cold sale. And you can also say at this point, oh, and by the way, so-and-so referred us. What did they say? Because remember, if you start overselling to a person who's highly referred to, you've been referred to, they're like, please, I just want to buy, And I had an example where I was talking to a client the other day. They said they were talking in a sales conversation, and the client's just saying, look, please, we just want to work with you, we love you, but actually, and I'm saying to them, slow down the conversation, because if you just say, yes, we'll work with you, here it is, 10 minutes down the track, or 2 weeks down the track, it's not a match anymore. You haven't found out. So step 3, after you've done that positioning piece, and I think there was just a little secret for the timing of responding to an inquiry, but let's handle those questions at the end where we acknowledge them, is you've got to understand the challenge, and that's called the fact find. And in this fact find, what we're going to do in the next session is get you to talk about the type of questions in the fact find. So I'm just going to, what's your experience in your fact finding? So, remember, we've done this agenda piece, we've done the positioning, establishing credibility. So just imagine the conversation's going like that. We could be 15 minutes into the conversation by now. Now you've got to do this juicy piece, because remember, after the fact find comes the presentation. And the key about the fact find is that you've got to present to what you found out. So how do you help people find out some of the techniques in the fact find, Ben? So when they go into their breakout groups, that we've given them a bit of a steer of what the quality of the questions that they can ask.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I look at it in a number of ways. First of all, carrying on the back of big open questions, maintain that. I look at it as a funnel. So you need to have a bit of rapport. Hopefully you've built some by this point in the conversation already. So you're not immediately going to go in and ask someone what their inside leg measurement is. How long have you been in the business? What have you seen change over the period of time that you've been here? What projects have gone well, and when they didn't, what were the things that you think may have you would have liked to have changed or had more control over? And what you're slowly doing is you're starting big and broad and narrowing down your focus to get to an answer. Now, in my experience, people generally have a problem with money, resource, time, and process. And if you look at any of those 3 or 4 things, you can probably track back your question. So ask a nice big open question that's going to get an answer to deal with resource related situations, budget related situations, process related situations, and you narrow down. And there's again another saying, I've got thousands of them, but it's the inch wide, mile deep questioning technique, where if you hear an answer, don't go into an interrogation, because that is then one question after another that aren't related to the prior answer. So if you've asked how long they've been there, 5 years, don't suddenly ask them how big their budget is. 5 years. What have you seen in the last 5 years? And then you just narrow it down, and you're staying inch wide, mile deep, and you keep mining that seam, mine it until you get as much information out of that line of inquiry as possible. Summarize and start on another seam, because you don't want to exhaust an individual, and then it becomes almost you're crossing the line between psychopath and really going into trying to get under the skin of a business. But keep it organic, keep it really natural, stuff that you'd ask people if you first met them at a social event. Be curious. So nice big open questions, and then the question follow on from the answer.
Yeah, and I think you explained something really well there. That's one of the techniques that's really valuable. And I think another takeaway today is the power. You called it the funnel. I called it the power of the third party question. And so in a fact find, if you get too direct with people, they won't tell you the truth. So it's again, what we're trying to do is find out the truth. So often when I want to find out what's really going on, what I'll start with is a big open question, like what's going on in if I'm talking to a lawyer, for instance, what's going on in the legal industry at the moment? And they'll say, what's happening with your firm at the moment? And then I tier it to what's happening in your team at the moment? What sort of issues? And then how are you finding this? But actually, when the person started talking about what was happening in the industry and happening in their firm, they're actually telling you about themselves. And that's the secret of using third-party questions, because whatever somebody answers, they're actually giving you what they actually want to say, not because it has to come from inside them. But because you've put it in a third-party framework, they feel quite happy to. And, that's a really key thing. So what we're going to do is, and you also had a good point there about open and closed questions. And so, and different types of questions. So in this next breakout session, spend your time imagining you're in a fact find with a client. You're at this point, you're at step number 3. And remember, you're not presenting yet. You're just asking questions. You're not having this two-way conversation. You're still draining the client. And there's a real key why you're draining the client of all their stuff. It's because then there's enough space for you to be able to present. If you can't present, you've got to be able to present to the client when they're available to present. But they're not available to present unless you've drained them of all their information. Then they're open. So in this breakout room, we're going to ask you to discuss what are some of the questions that you use in your business today to uncover people. I have some favorite ones, like, what do you do well in your business that others in your industry find hard to do? And so, questions like that are and discuss. Then you take those questions And remember, those questions have also related to your specific agenda that you found out. So that's why it's good to keep a note of what, they asked you to find out. Talk a little bit about now how you create your presentation in your group, having found that information. How do you make that bridge between the fact find of finding all the information out and then finally getting the chance to present? How do you work with that bridge? And Ben, how do you switch into the presentation? So you just quickly, don't give the whole secret away, but is that something that's a little nuanced for you?
No, I think it's a really crucial bit, but it comes down to acknowledgement, right? So you've heard everything that they've said, you've written it down, you acknowledge what it is, and then you've got to stew on that and recognize how you're going to turn that into a narrative. So I'll share my experience. I don't want to ruin the session, so I'll share this bit afterwards. But just to reiterate, how you present does not mean PowerPoint. All right, it does not mean predetermined slides. It means how you are meeting the needs of the individual. So I'll explain my process on the other side of this chat.
That's really good. That'll be really useful, Ben, because often what you're doing is that you're receiving information, and at the same time you've got track 2 running, which is you're creating your presentation in your head. And I say this is just a training, and structuring the structure of this process of being a 7-step process, because you know what the structure is, enables you to be able to be creating your presentation in the back of your mind at the same time. And people sometimes think, well, how do you do that? Well, you actually can do that when you've got a structure to follow, because the structure has integrity and it frees you up. Yeah. And because you're able to listen and create at the same time. But anyway, after your session, see if you can fact find with some good questions each other's business if you're if you're a selling situation. And remember the time, really focus on the types of questions as well, and start to, if there's any takeaways, make sure you write them down in your breakout session and practice to use them, because your cohorts in your session will actually give you some key nuggets as well. Cool. We'll see you after the session for the next exciting step.
10 to 15 minutes. Enjoy. Slowly creeping back in. Ben Collier, I see you.
Hello.
Cool. Hopefully that was a good session. I think a few people just waiting to come back in, so we'll give it 20 seconds or so. Good stuff. So I wonder how many deals actually got done in that breakout. Be fascinated to find out later. Any good connections? I know we've got some lethal salespeople here already. But it's a really useful exercise, just to sort of carry on from before we went into the breakout rooms, is big open questions, really narrowing down the finding. It's fundamental. It's not important, it's fundamental. If you don't do it, you're not going to be able to close a barn door, let alone a deal. So make sure you are using those questions in your day-to-day. To answer Ron directly, you asked me what my framework is for then moving from questioning to presentation, and how I structure that presentation. So in my mind, it's quite a simple process, but it is structured, and anyone that's working with at the moment will know we go through this process. And that is for whether you're a service business, whether you're a product business, you will have a list of features or services within your organization. There will be very apparent advantages of using those features or services, but most importantly, there is a very direct benefit of using those features or services within your organization. So whatever needs you've found through questioning, and you've got a very clearly defined FAB, features, advantages, benefits, you'll be able to move very quickly to answer the need directly. So the need might be that they haven't got enough staff. Your system or your tool or your service may help deliver great value by improving processes. So the feature is, this is what it's called. The advantage, this is how it works, and this is how your team will use it. And the benefit is, which means, Mr. or Mrs. Client, you don't have to worry about having a lack of resource. We take that pain point away, but you're only servicing the direct answer to the problems that you've established. So that would be my quick framework. And there is a blog on my website if you want to go and have a look about more detail what FABs are.
Really, really good. And there's a really another layer to this, and thank you for that, Ben, because what you've just described is taking them. The presentation has to be done when the person's, as I said, you've got everything out of them, but you've got to shift them into a space where they're in a more emotional space. And obviously by answering directly their needs, they are. But during the fact find, I don't know if any of you had the chance to discuss, but in that process of asking them questions, is you've got to move them to what I call a feel find, and that's simply done by inserting the word feel into one of your questions. It could be, how do you feel about your staff at the moment? And that comes at the second part of that fact find, because what you're doing is getting them ready for the presentation. And if you present to somebody who's in a very thinking space, not a feeling space, they'll just analyze your presentation. They'll just think about it. But actually what we all know is that buying decisions are made the beginning of them are made in an emotional space. They're not made in a thinking space. So they have to process the thinking, but the connection is made in the emotional space. So for instance, if you have that real estate, example I was just using, a very simple one, during the fact find, the real estate agent could be asking, how do you feel about moving? Or how do you feel about having 40 people come through your house? And that immediately engages the person in that much more of an emotional context, which makes the presentation much more accessible to people. And so when what Ben said, see the benefits of it, they go, yes, that's good. That's good for me. But then, we have this point as well of we've done this presentation, we've done the FAB, which is fabulous, obviously, and you're there. Now you're in this place. You've finished your presentation. You've answered all the specific agenda points. What do you do? What happens now, Ben? That's it. That's exactly what happens. You actually become very silent. You just sit like a Buddha in silence. And that's the fifth step, which is, we all know in traditional sales, is called the pause. But it's probably the one that most people that I come across and work with have difficulty with. It's almost like they run out the presentation and then go, do you like that? Like a closed question asked from a point of what I would call insecurity. And because people are buying from confident people, they don't want to buy from people who aren't confident. So to be confident is to be able to sit in your own silence, just like Ben did then. He wasn't nervous. He was just, and what I do is I just sit there and go, I've said what I've had to say. The only way that I will know how they're going to respond is for them to speak first. Because they're either going to say to me, I really like that. That's fantastic. Or they're going to say to me, oh, I didn't understand that piece. Can you explain that piece again? Which means that they haven't bought. And I know I said the specific word was the key takeaway for the day, but I think this is the real key takeaway. And that's really the work that I do, is helping people sit in that silent space with confidence. And that's because without that, you don't know. You walk out of that meeting and you don't know whether that person actually bought or not. They'll tell you, they'll go, oh yeah, send me a proposal, but you never hear from them again. And so if they say they have more information, you've got to go back, represent, and then you pause again and you wait. And it's okay. Don't be invested whether they buy or not. Just be sitting there going, I want the next piece of information. Okay, where do we go from here, Ben? You've done the pause. They said they want to buy. You're like, oh my God. But you've still got to be calm.
Yep.
What do you do next, Ben?
Well, you take control of the situation above anything else, right? So somebody's bought in, you've found their needs, you've matched up the benefits. They broke first after your silence, or you're playing games and thinking about what's for dinner tonight while you're sitting quiet, and then they broke and they're like, yeah, let's go ahead. Well, depending on what your processes are, you can send out a contract and you can do X, Y, Z, whatever your business is, but control the timeline.
Yep. So I ask them to do something. I say the key is you've got to make an agreement what you're going to do.
Yep, exactly.
And
so you're resetting your next agenda, right? So who's owning what part of this process and where do we go next, and get it time bound?
yeah, and also cost bound. They'll say, if you haven't presented how much it costs, they'll say, how much does this cost? And you've got to say, it costs this much, it's like this, it works like this. Now, what I need you to do is go and do this. You've got to give them something to do, and then you have something to do. Is that how you do it, Ben?
It's mutually beneficial, absolutely.
Exactly.
It's so you're putting in the legwork to help them, but equally they're putting a lot of effort to query you and challenge you and question you around what your delivery is. Mutually beneficial. You've both now got to work on getting this across the line, and it is a partnership, not client supplier. So I'd agree entirely.
Yeah. Okay. And that is the 7-step process. We can send this out to you if people, just send those steps so everybody's reminded after this. When you try this out, don't be discouraged if it doesn't work, because you've got to practice like anything. And so I say, just practice if you just practice the first bit of getting the specific agenda out, that will change everything for you, because then you know what you've got. So just practice bits of it. Is there any further training that you do on it, Ben, that people can be interested in?
Well, we're going to be doing more of these sessions. So the structure of the way the South Coast Sellers Club is going to be set up is we're going to be more and more practical in the sale advice. So we'll continue to do that. How about yourself? Can anyone find some Ron Tanner stuff online?
Yeah, I'm doing I coach a lot of trainers. That's specifically what I do in Better Conversations. And I'm running a training, I think the second week of June at Hotel Devin. It's through the Sherlaw's brand at the moment. I train hundreds of coaches, and really at that conversation, at that training for 2 days, you get very, very deep on controlling the conversation, knowing where you are in the conversation. Because my big phrase is structure creates integrity. To be in your own integrity means having a structure that you follow. It also means that you can teach other people in your organization. You can actually start to measure how good salespeople are. Without a structure, you can't measure it. You can then also group train of what areas of the process that need more help with others and what you can encourage people more with. So I'd invite you all there. You can find it on the Sherlaw's website, or ask Ben.
I'll send some links out.
Post a link to it, Ben. But very happy to see any of you there as well.
Fantastic.
So specifically, Ben, what do we need to do? Is there any quick questions that we need to finish off with?
So we had a couple of questions. So is there a secret for timing on responding to an inquiry? And short answer to that is as fast as humanly possible. You be attentive, get there. If you're in a conversation, it's slightly different. It's a natural back and forth. But if you're getting an inquiry coming in, don't sit on it for a day. The quicker you respond, and there's plenty of statistics out there to prove it, the quicker you respond, the more likely you are to close the deal. So exploring that. I mean, if anyone's got any questions, we've got a couple of minutes left, so we can get them in the Q&A. But if not, we can obviously explore further chat in the LinkedIn group as well. So I guess the key thing for me that I found really fascinating is that people think about sales as having the gift of the gab and being able to talk. But the irony is it's about listening and keeping quiet.
Someone's just asked a question there, Ben, in the chat.
Do you mention your price in your presentation, or wait for them to ask?
This is we'll both have different views on this, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
a really good question.
Well, you take yours, and I'll see if I agree or not.
Well, it of course raises another question, which I love to do. Of course, is it raises: are you selling value, or are you selling on price? And I think that determines it, because if you're having a value conversation, you don't mention the price. because you're selling value inside your presentation. And the person is then making up the price of what they think it's worth. And so when you do present the price, this is how much it costs. And so when you do present the price, you've got to present it confidently. So, I'll say, it's going to cost you £2,000 a month, and don't buy it for under 6 months. You won't get any value from it. So you're selling a value proposition. How do you find it, Ben?
Exactly the same. It's if you send a proposal, everyone skims to the last page to look for the price anyway. Whereas if you've built on value, you will never need to close a deal in your life, because they'll buy into it regardless of the cost, because they understand the return on that investment.
I had a great experience this morning. I was at the dentist. Often a risky thing to do before you do a presentation, but I thought I'd go for it anyway. And it's an expensive package, and I'm going through the process, watching him present to me, and at the end of it, he says, "Yeah, I know it costs a lot, but you're getting me." And I thought, that's so great. It raised my confidence in him as a person. I knew it was a good sales technique, and I love being sold to. I love it because a good sales experience, people enjoy. It's not bad. Yeah. It's enjoyable.
I agree wholeheartedly. Well, I'm very conscious of time, and thank you very much for your time, Ron, and for everybody that's come along to listen today. If you've got more questions, please get them into LinkedIn. There is some slides elsewhere that will show you how we can get into that LinkedIn group. So whoever's driving the slides, can we have the next one, please? There we go. So this is the Silicon Brighton Hub, where you can get all of the updates on all of Silicon Brighton's events. There's a networking community in there as well, so we can take it away from the online side of things. So go and connect with people, share your content, and there's a big growing community on the Silicon Brighton Hub. And equally, if you want to join our LinkedIn group, there is a QR code here on the left-hand side. So get your phones out and scan that. If you don't have time to do this on the presentation, you can go back and look at the video, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll point you in the right direction. Equally, our next event, and maybe the last one that will be online, will be on Thursday, the 10th of June. And we're going to explore more on the topic of that in the coming days and share more information with you. But I want to thank you all again for your time. Thank you to Ron Tanner, the team at Silicon Brighton, for setting this up with myself, Ben Bennett from Second Voice. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will catch up with you all very soon. Take care, everyone.
Great, everybody. See you. Thank you.